Good afternoon and welcome to Fairfield County webinar, How to Run a Consulting Business. I'm Steve Smith and I'm the webinar coordinator as well as a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. Our presenter today is Bob Hogan, and I'll give you a little more information on Bob in just a second, but first a little bit on SCORE. I can see from the names of the folks that have signed in so far that several of you are pretty familiar with SCORE already, but bear with me for a second. SCORE is a part of the Small Business Administration of the federal government. We have over 300 offices throughout the United States. The Fairfield County office is the one you're affiliated with right now. We're in Norwalk on East Avenue. And we have about 100 volunteers, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but basically we average out about 100 volunteers, about two-thirds of whom are actually retired and one-third are still actively working and volunteering at SCORE. There are three really high value-added things that we provide to the market. And most folks come to the table with either industry expertise, some business process expertise, and we try to deliver those expertise through one-on-one counseling, either in our offices in Norwalk or in a neutral location, if you will, like a coffee shop or a diner. We also deliver these webinars, and you're on one of those, of course. We're now doing 2 webinars per month. And we also have access to all of the subject matter experts throughout the U.S. So if you've got a topic that's troubling you and we can't answer it locally, we can find somebody that can. Now getting a little more specific on the webinars. Our next webinar is November 22nd, and Carolyn Torme will present Unlocking the Mysteries of Franchising. You can look for the specifics on scorefairfieldcounty.org. That's scorefairfieldcounty.org. Or you will be getting, actually you've already gotten a marketing piece on that webinar, which actually reminds me that I should make a mention of the fact that effective October 1st, SCORE Fairfield County changed our email marketing program. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't confusing anybody, so let me just state what we changed. We used to send one email per event, a month in advance and 3 or 4 days in advance, so we had one email per event. There were a lot of events. We do over 150 workshops and another 20 webinars per year. So we made a change to go to a monthly email communication or marketing piece that would contain all of the webinars and workshops coming up the next month, as well as one a week before that would cover just the ones that are coming up that next week. So you're going to see a lot less. I mean, if you do the numbers on that, you're going to see 5, where before you might have seen 12. So don't get confused. We're still out here, and we'd love to see you at our workshops and webinars. Now, today, I'm going to stop talking here quickly. In a minute, we're going to run this from noon to 1 o'clock. The process is about 12:45. We'll switch it over to questions and answers. If you have a question, go to your chat capability on ReadyTalk in the lower left-hand corner and state your question. I'll come back on about 12:45 and kind of moderate the questions and feed them to Bob, and we'll try to do that kind of in tandem. So, Bob Hogan. Bob is a SCORE mentor, and he's a co-moderator of our webinar program. You may have heard him. He did the webinar we did 2 weeks ago. Bob has over 30 years of consulting industry expertise, most all of it with what used to be called Towers Perrin, and it's now Willis Towers Watson. where he consulted on a wide range of topics for both U.S. and international clients. He served at Towers Perrin as a global line of business leader, chief operating officer, and chief financial officer. So truly a jack of all trades, or a Bob of all trades, as it may be. So Bob, with that extremely pathetic joke, I'm going to hand it over to you. And to those of you out there, I'll be back about 12:45. Thank you very much for attending. Bob?
Thanks, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to get started here, I thought I'd just briefly go over what I'm going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so. I'm going to start off with a few general things to consider. If you're thinking of going into the consulting business, or if you just got going in the consulting business, I think there's some things that you really need to think about before you actually get going. And then I'm going to spend a fair amount of time talking about positioning your firm and your services, how to package them, and also a little bit about pricing strategies as well. And then just some brief comments on getting started. It's pretty straightforward business to get going, but there's a few things that I think you could be cognizant of. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about critical success factors in the consulting business. There are a number of things that if you do them well, you will be successful, and so I want to touch base on those. And lastly, I'm going to end up on the marketing and selling topics, which I think are some of the most important things in consulting, is like getting the word out there, getting people to know about you, and then finding assignments and collecting for them. So. And as Steve says, we'll take some questions at the end, but please feel free to put those in as we go along into the chat feature. So next up here, then, just I'd say some general things to consider. And it may seem obvious, but consulting really is a knowledge business. I mean, you're selling your own expertise and brain power. There's very little in the way of capital that's required to get into that business, so it's low barrier to entry. You can pretty much do it from anywhere, especially these days with the technology available. So I think bear that in mind. One of the most important things, though, is that consulting really is a relationship business, and it takes time to develop relationships. And I think it's there's a direct relationship between success and the trust that your clients have in you. So if they feel that they trust you and trust your advice, then they're going to perceive that they get value and you're going to be successful. I'm going to cover this in a fair amount of detail, but I think you can't be everything to everybody in the consulting business, and so you need some clarity around what market you're going to go after, and then within that market, what services are you going to deliver to that market. Again, don't try and deliver all things to all people. It's likely a recipe for failure. Consulting has got a wide range of liability risks. Generally, if you're in the numerical kinds of consulting businesses, you do run the risk of having liability, and you likely need some errors and omissions insurance. If you are doing what I call softer consulting, like you might be doing training or something like that, that's a much lower risk, and you have less of a need for liability in there, and less chance of getting into a lawsuit. What we found is that consulting, particularly small businesses, and when you're starting up, it really works best if you've got a good Rolodex, and you've either got some pre-existing clients that you've got from something else that you did in another career, or as a minimum have that robust network of contacts. As we all know, relationships take time to develop, so it really will give you a head start if you've got that in advance when you get going. And I think it ties into the next one, that revenue streams are lumpy. Often you'll find yourself in the consulting business, you either have too much work or not enough work, so it's going to go up and down. And if you're just getting going, it's likely going to be a minimum of 3 to 6 months before you see any cash flow, and it could be a lot longer than that if you have to develop relationships and get into the marketplace. So just things to keep in mind as you get going. And again, I can take questions on that later on as we go. But let's talk now about how to position your consulting business. And on this slide, what I've tried to do is say there's really three axes, if you like, that you can think about. You can position yourself around functional expertise. So I've given some examples there on the left-hand side. You'll see you can be a general management consultant. You might focus yourself around the human resource function and be an expert in that area, or an IT expert or a marketing expert. And so that's all about functional expertise, and you can often do that across industries. So for example, if you're an HR expert, you could often consult to companies in a wide range of industries. Another way that you can position yourself is as an industry expert. For example, you might be an expert in the financial services or the energy business or in high-tech firms, and you will target all of your efforts, if you like, on a particular industry, and you'll have a reputation, you'll get known in that industry. And typically, the bigger firms are, the more specialized they are, they will look for industry expertise. I know a lot of my consulting, Steve mentioned it, when I was doing consulting, I did a lot of work in the energy industry and in the transportation area, and really knew how those businesses worked, and it helped me immensely. So if you have industry expertise, try and capitalize on it. Client size is I think, really quite important, and that you kind of target where you can best make the best impact. And if you target large firms, what they're going to expect is very deep and specialized expertise. So quite often, that is not the place to go hunting if you're a small consulting firm, because you don't have the deep expertise and the resources necessary to do that. So you might want to focus on more smaller or mid-sized companies that are looking for a broader, more general range of expertise that you can provide to them. Or they're looking, as I said, maybe for an industry expert, or they want an HR expert. Or even within those functions, I'll make this comparison. You might have a smaller mid-sized firm that's looking for HR consulting help, if I use that example. But if you get to larger firms, they're going to go down to even a subspecialty where they want a compensation consultant, or they want a benefits expert, or they want an HR planning expert. So again, it really pays to really think about where the market for your services are. Try and position yourself to your strengths, and you'll find that you'll get a target market that suits your expertise when you do that. Okay, I'm next going to talk about deliverables. I think people sometimes say, oh, I'm a consultant and I advise clients and I can do lots of things. But the reality is clients buy solutions to problems, and you need to be very specific when positioning yourself. And I've given some examples on this page that there are consultants, and general management consultants might be a good example of that they just give advice and counsel. Or even legal firms, if you like, are an example of companies that give advice. But more specific than that, you might be a business planning expert, and in that case, your deliverable to your client might be a business plan. So your positioning is, I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you do some business planning, and what you're going to take away when I'm done is a business plan that will help you either launch your business or grow your business, whatever the target is going to be. Many consulting firms have specific problem-solving tools, because when you get right down to it, we solve problems as consultants. And they could be diagnostic tools. They could be like survey tools that are proprietary to you as a consultant. Consultants might use focus groups as a tool to get to problems. So there's lots of different things that you can do to have diagnostic tools there. Software systems, lots of consulting firms in the IT space where they're selling specific software systems. So if that's what you're doing, make that really clear to your client that that's what you're going to deliver. Maybe you have a software tool that helps a company with inventory management, or maybe you build applications for or websites. But again, that would be your specific deliverable that you're going to deliver to that client. Market research is a common area for consulting firms. Again, the specific deliverable there is you're going to research a segment of the market, you're going to come back with that research, and then I think what you need to do then is say, and here's how you can use that research to improve your business. Typically in the market area, it's how you're going to grow your business or how you're going to find a new market segment. Training. That can be a very defined deliverable as well, where you have a defined curriculum that you're going to bring to the party there, and it might be in the form of so many days of it's a 2 or 3 day training course that you can deliver to the employees of the company, or you're going to train them on a specific skill or a specific software app. Again, be really clear on what they're going to come away with when you're there. Outsourcing is something that's come on in the last decade or two, where clients will often outsource specific services to a consulting firm. One that I was familiar with in my career was benefits administration outsourcing, where clients did not want to do administration for their benefit plans, and they outsourced it to a consulting firm. And again, it's a little different animal than consulting, because you're not giving advice, you're actually giving a deliverable there. So you need to make that clear that you are delivering a service and not necessarily advice, or that you segment the two and charge separately for them. And lastly, I put down here like a temporary executive, or sometimes what we call an extra pair of hands. And I think an easy example there would be, for example, a tax accountant that comes in and is an extra pair of hands at tax time, and helps the company out with their tax situation, and then they leave. So they're a temporary situation right there. But again, I'll come back and say that the key to success here is to articulate what the client can expect you to bring, or your firm to bring, when you're in there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about positioning strategy. And this first one I think is unique to a lot of different businesses, and it's articulating what differentiates you from everyone else. What are your unique experience and skills? Because when you look at what a client's going to buy, they're typically buying the skills and expertise of an individual. So they're going to look and say, why should I hire consultant A versus consultant B? It often will come down to trust, as I've mentioned before, but also, do you have the experience? Have you seen this problem before? Have you done this assignment before? You have a unique set of skills that client does not have in-house. In my own case, I was a consulting actuary. A lot of clients did not have those kinds of skills in-house, and so that's what differentiated there. But we still had to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. I think it often helps after you've looked at your target market to think in your mind that if I could get the ideal client, what does that look like? What's the profile of that client? Is it a smaller type client who needs help in the IT space? That's my favorite hunting ground, if you like. And it might be more specific than that. It might be smaller IT clients that are located in a certain area or in a certain industry. Again, as I mentioned earlier, larger clients can be more difficult for smaller firms to market to, because they're looking for very specific industry and functional knowledge. And if you're going to market to large clients, you really want to make sure that you bear that in mind. Communicating your value, again, this gets a little bit into marketing. I'll repeat again that clients hire consultants to solve their problems, and so you need to make sure that you can articulate what problems you're going to solve for that client, and that will often come down to doing some work ahead of time. It'll come down to listening, because often clients don't really know sometimes what problem they want solved. They need help in shaping that problem, and if you can do that, that's really going to help you get the insight on getting the work. And then I often tell clients that try and paint what success is going to look like. So, for example, if you are doing consulting work for a client, or you're delivering something, try to take that next step and say, is this going to result in an outcome that's going to help their business? So, for example, is it going to result in higher revenues? Is what you're doing going to lower their costs? Is it going to improve their employee retention? Is it going to improve their customer satisfaction? You can often link it to one of those 4 areas or some other area, but that's what you're going to want to do, because then it becomes very clear in the client's mind that I've got this problem, and you're going to solve that problem, and if you do, I'm going to get my costs lower or my revenues higher, whatever the outcome is going to be, so that they see an explicit return on the investment that they're going to get by paying your fees. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fees and pricing and packaging for a minute. Pricing can be all over the place. My advice to small consulting firms or small individuals who are doing consulting is try to price on a fixed fee basis, but that fixed fee is based on an hourly rate that you don't share. And why do I say that? Clients generally want certainty in what fees are going to cost. They generally are less comfortable if you just say, well, my rate is $100 an hour and it's open-ended. I don't know how long this is going to take or how long it's going to cost. So I think they're looking for some certainty there. And from the other side of that, you need to make sure that you have defined the scope of the project as tightly as you can so that it doesn't continue on and if you like, the project that never ends, so that you've quoted a fixed fee, but then there's no end to the project. That's a consultant's nightmare. I have listed here a few hourly rates and some ranges based on some of our experience here at SCORE. These are ranges for small consulting firms. I must say, if the national consulting firms, general management firms, Big Four accounting firms are going to have rates that are many multiples of these, but this is kind of what we see for different kinds of consulting in here. So if you're struggling with kind of what to base your pricing on, maybe this can be a guide for you. Again, when you're packaging up an assignment, to the extent you can, think about what a typical engagement looks like, what the steps are that are involved, how long it's going to take, not only from the number of hours, but also elapsed time, and what are the deliverables, and really be clear about the deliverables. And some tips here, if the deliverable, let's say, is a report or a presentation, state that in your proposal that is the deliverable, and if you like, the project therefore ends when that deliverable is gone. I've seen horror stories in my career where that has not been done, and then the client says, oh, I'd like you to do that presentation again to my board and then to my employees, and the next thing you know, you're into 4 or 5 or 6 presentations that you didn't price in, but that the client expects was included in your fixed price. So again, be clear about that and what the deliverables are. Often if it's a report, you can say that you'll share a draft of the report with your client, and you'll take their changes, and then you'll make those changes and you'll get it back to them. Again, the nightmare is that a client keeps wanting a report edited and edited and edited again, and you end up with a project that never ends. So again, define that carefully. Another tip, if you're working with a new client or you're just trying to get out there and you get started, is to do what I've said here on the slide, is think about an entry-level offering that'll help build credibility, and what that can often turn into is almost like a paid proposal. So let me give you an example. If you're doing some, say, for example, general management consulting, you might want to have an entry-level offering that says that you will facilitate a half-day or a one-day session with the company's management, and then you'll give your findings. And what that does, it allows you to build rapport, and it allows you to build relationships with that management, and most importantly, allows you to listen to what their problems are, and then go back and propose on a second phase or a third phase of work, so that essentially they see you, they like you, you build trust, you build credibility, you get to learn in return about all kinds of information about the company, and then you come back and try and sell a second phase. They're more likely to buy that because it's going to be less risk from a financial point of view. You're selling a relatively low-priced offering for just half a day or a day of your time. Another way to do it if you're in the training business is that you might have an introductory training where you agree to come and do a one-day introductory training class, and then they get to see how you present. They get to get the reaction from their employees to that training, and then, again, you can sell more training and maybe a broader curriculum on the back of that. If you are getting into implementation work, so for example, if you've given a bunch of recommendations to a company, and maybe a good example here is in the IT area. You built some software, you're getting into implementing it. You may want to switch from a project basis to more of a retainer relationship where you're charging them on a monthly basis for your services. At that point, you have a lower cost of sale. You might not need to charge as much, and you might be wanting to lock them in for a longer period of time. And again, it's something that can be very profitable for you, because the lower you can get your cost of sale down, the more profitable your business is going to be. A couple things on quoting. Consultants are notorious for underestimating the amount of time it takes to do the job. So it will always take you longer than you think. So don't be afraid to price in the amount of time that's going to take, which might result in a higher price, because clients will pay for good work that meets their needs. And that's what I really want to stress, that you need to be selling stuff that meets their needs, and they trust you. So if you are going to go the other way and you're going to say, well, I need to get a lower price to get this piece of work, I would advise that you advise the client that you're going to make an investment in the relationship. You're going to do this for less than what it's going to cost. For example, it's going to cost X, and you say, I'm going to do it for X divided by 2 to invest in the relationship, and then at least they will know that you're investing in the relationship, and when you go to do more work for them, they won't be surprised that the price is higher. Let's talk a little bit about just getting started, and this is pretty straightforward. As I mentioned at the outset, I think small consulting businesses these days are very easily started and run from a home office. I don't think there's any need right out of the gate to go and buy expensive office space or anything like that, but you could graduate to that later as your business grows, depending on your needs. There are some things, though, I think in this day and age that you do need. I'd suggest you definitely need some kind of website out there with your description and your credentials, testimonials if you've got it. I view the website essentially these days as your corporate brochure. That's clients are going to want to go to your website to check you out, to see what your expertise, your skills are, and they want to do it there. What the good part about a website for you is that you can change it quite easily, and it doesn't have to be a complex website. You're not transacting business on here. It's more of a descriptive website, certainly when you get going. Presence on social media, again, there's all kinds of them out there, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter. Pick the ones where you think your clients are most likely to be. I've mentioned LinkedIn here, but some businesses have been successful on Facebook and other areas of social media as well. Not a very capital-intensive business is consulting, but my comment here is don't skimp on your equipment and software. It's pretty basic, so get what you need in terms of computing resources, comprehensive software, printing, scanning, fax. Needs robust internet and Wi-Fi connections. But if I have to stress 2 things here, it would be that you need backups and antiviral programs. You really want to make sure you've got that, particularly if you've got client data on your machines. You want it backed up, and you don't want it infected with viruses. And what is very important these days is security of information. Clients, these are big concerns of clients these days, particularly if you're holding proprietary information on your systems, whether it's employee data, whether it's marketing data. They are going to want some kind of assurance that it's secure, and will often ask for that in the consulting contract that you're doing. So again, those would be the key items that if you're getting started to really take those into account. Let's talk a little bit about legal and operational things when you're getting started. Just a few comments on business structure. I've listed 3 there. The easiest one obviously is a sole proprietor, where you just go into business and it goes on to your tax returns, the income. You just do it as you would an individual. I think the one we see that's most common is the LLC, and what that does is it gives you some limited liability protection there, and I would certainly recommend that over a sole proprietorship. It's pretty straightforward from an operating point of view, too, in that your income and expenses all go on a schedule on your income tax return, and so the complexity is fairly straightforward. If you want to move up the complexity scale, you can go to an S corp. Often would be better if you're having multiple partners. You want to separate the entity from your personal taxes. But again, the reporting is more complex, the tax structure is more complex, so make sure that if you're going to go that way, that the business really warrants it. Liability insurance, as I did comment on that, as things to consider getting going. You're going to need some kind of, if you're working out of your house, make sure you talk to your insurer about getting some general liability coverage and that they're aware you're running a business out of your house. Errors and omissions insurance will vary with the kind of business that you have. So, if you are, giving civil engineering advice on building bridges, then you likely want to have E&O insurance. If you're doing some fairly low-risk training, you maybe say, I can get away without that. And there's kind of everything in between that you can look at. It is worthwhile to develop what I've referred to here as a proposal template. It makes things easier. It gets your standard terms and conditions in there, and I'm talking about conditions around things like how you're going to handle client data, your commitments and terms around confidentiality. If you have proprietary tools or proprietary processes, you likely want to have something in there about ownership of intellectual capital. That's where that would go into that proposal template. And again, it just helps to have a template where it can save time and you can drop, the description of the job in, you can drop the pricing in, you can drop the standard information about your skills, expertise, references, that kind of thing. Invoicing and payment terms, I would also suggest that your proposal contain that as well toward the end of your proposal. Typically, if you are doing work on a fixed fee basis, what I would suggest is that you get paid in installments so that if it's a relatively small job, for example, maybe it's only going to last a month, you might want half of the job up front and get paid the other half when you do the deliverable at the end. If it's going to be a longer job, let's say it's going to be a project that goes 3 or 4 months, again, you might want to get a quarter of it up front and then another quarter after the first month, another quarter after the second month, and then the last quarter at the end. But get installments. It is much better to try and get work up front. It's becoming pretty common right now in the consulting business that once you sign the contract that you do want some kind of upfront payment before you start. Project management tools, this is really unique to the kind of work that you're doing. It can range everywhere from just having an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of projects to having detailed Microsoft project software. And again, the key thing is you're likely going to be running multiple projects at once, or you're likely going to be running a long project. And so that's up to you to really have good project management around that so that you can keep the client up to date and that you also know where you are in the project versus your costs versus your pricing. Accounting and finance, not going to say too much about that, but if you don't already, you should have some kind of accounting software like QuickBooks set up so that you can keep track of your revenues, keep track of your expenses. It often will pay you to have an accountant help you to set up the chart of accounts. It's generally not that difficult to record your expenses and whatnot if you get it set up professionally by an accountant, and then they can help you do your taxes at the end of the year. But and you can also, the software these days is pretty robust, and it will tell you how you're looking on both a cash basis and an accrual basis in your business. And cash is important, particularly in the consulting business, that you have cash flow, but it also, you're going to want to look and see where you are on an accrual basis. How much money have you taken in versus how much work do you have left to deliver? Talk a little bit about critical success factors for consulting. I think the first one goes without saying. You have to have competence in your area of expertise, whether it's technical competence in the IT area, the marketing area, the HR area. It's kind of like table stakes, if you like. But you can be the best technician in the world, and if you cannot communicate, you will not succeed in the consulting business. You need to be able to communicate well, articulate what problems you're trying to solve, articulate solutions, and you have to have interpersonal skills. We should, as consultants, I think, spend the majority of our time listening to our clients rather than talking. There's lots of rules of thumb around that, 2/3 of the time listening. But certainly you should not be filling all the time talking, and you should have the ability to have tact. Often you get into thorny areas with your clients, and you've got to keep things confidential, yet you've got to deliver some difficult messages sometimes that sometimes we get in and there are things that are kind of hard to say, but you've got to have the tact to say them, and you've got to have clarity around how you say them without coming down that, I know everything, I'm the consultant that knows everything. So that's the last thing you want to be, is you want to be condescending to your clients. So you want to be factual, you want to be straightforward, and you want to be really clear with what your recommendations are. You are the jack of all trades in your business. You're the consultant. You're the CEO, the CFO, the marketing person, the delivery person. Often, particularly if you have a small person. So you're going to need self-discipline around that. You have to be good at multitasking. You're going to have to be good at delivering your product as well as developing business and relationships as you go. And that takes a fair amount of self-discipline to do that. You're not going to have anyone telling you what to do. Your clients are the ones that are going to be dictating your schedule, so you have to have the ability to do that. And last but not least, if you don't have marketing and selling skills and can bring in the business, you're going to starve to death. So I thought it would be useful to spend the last bit of the session on marketing, which I actually, as I said on the slide here, I think it's often the toughest part of the job for a lot of people. And because you need to sell yourself. You're selling your expertise, and to sell yourself, I'm a firm believer that clients need to meet you, and I'm a firm believer that you have to craft a very concise marketing message. So take the time to do this. It's difficult. It takes time. Test it out on different people, and I think you'll find it's well worth the time. That the clearer you can be on the value you can bring and the problems you can solve, the more successful you're going to be. Lots of different channels to attract clients. I talked earlier about website and social media presence. Remember that even though you have a website, you still got to drive people and attract them there. So you can have a blog. People can send out newsletters. If you have a chance to do presentations or conduct workshops to your target audience, those are good places to go as well. Joining network groups, might be the Chamber of Commerce, it might be an industry association, things like that. Trade shows, events, anything that's going to get your name and expertise out there to where your buyers are going to be, and that's the key here. Think about where they're going to be, and that's where you need to get to. Another good source can be marketing partners. You might have other professionals that you interface with. Maybe they're attorneys, maybe they're accountants, things like that can work your way. Or if you're in the IT business, maybe there's different people in that business that can work your way, and then vice versa, that you can refer them. As I mentioned earlier, not everybody can do everything, so I think it's important that you have some partnerships along the way. This next one I think often comes as a surprise to people. I'm saying you likely should be spending about 40% of your time or 2 days a week marketing yourself. And in the beginning, if you don't have any business and it's slow, you're likely to be spending 80 to 100% of your time doing that. The exception here would be if you have a lot of recurring work. So if you are in a business that recurs every year, or you're in an IT business where you have a lot of maintenance work, I think you can get away with less than that. But again, you're still going to want to be always looking for new clients, and I think it's important. And you've got to get out there and do it. You're not going to meet people by sitting behind your computer. So get out to different events, go and make calls, go to association meetings, go to networking groups, things like that. and be disciplined. Have that marketing plan that we talked earlier on where you're going to go and get your clients, and follow the plan, and most importantly, track the results. See what works, see what doesn't, and don't be afraid to go back and modify the plan. If you find that you're getting no business out of certain areas and you're getting a lot out of another one, ramp that one up and ramp the other one down. I already talked about the complementary business partners. I think this can often work very well in some consulting businesses where you are working in conjunction with another firm. For example, maybe you're doing strategy work and you have a firm that's really good at implementation. So you refer your implementation work to them, but they refer their strategy work to you. That would be an example of a business partnership that might work well. Talk about sales here for a minute. I find on a sales meeting that you want to have a fairly quick opening and introduction, have a concise explanation of what you do. It's that marketing message, but you really don't want to fill all the time and talk. You just want to get enough information out there where you can start questioning, and design your questions so that you can determine the problem that's out there. I mentioned earlier, a lot of times when you go to see a client, they're really not clear on what their problem is. And so your first order of business is to really determine what that is and whether you can address it. And if you can't address it, don't be afraid to say, this is not within my expertise, I can't do that, or I recommend something else. You will build tremendous credibility by just doing that and being honest with them that, this is something I can't do. I think the other thing to avoid is that you have a product or a deliverable that you're kind of sell, and that everyone needs that deliverable. It's kind of like if I'll use an example of what we did. Sometimes we had clients that they might, for example, come and say, we've got an employee retention problem, and if we sent a benefits consultant out there, they would conclude that they need a benefits fix, that the benefit programs weren't adequate. Or if we sent a compensation consultant out there, they would conclude they needed a compensation program change. Or a communication consultant would say, no, we need an employee communications program. So it's not what you're selling, it's what their problem is. And so really try and be honest with yourself on what the problem is and whether you can address it. You'll build a lot more trust and credibility in relationship and get work the next time. Talk to your client about the implications. Once you do have the problem defined, and you might say, well, let's say their costs are too high, and you have a piece of software that you think could really cut their costs. I think you want to say to the client, well, if we can successfully put this software in, what would that do to your business? And then if they believe that would really cut their costs, then the client is going to be much more enthusiastic for that solution, because now they can see, if I spend money on that piece of software, I'm going to get a big return on that investment because my costs are going to go down. Or again, if you're doing in the marketing consulting, the reverse can be true, that if you come and help them with a piece of marketing, getting them into a new market segment, their sales are going to increase. Again, they can see tangible evidence from what you're going to do to them to either their top line or the bottom line, and that's always a great thing in terms of selling. If the client is not enthusiastic for the solution, I can assure you they're not going to buy it. So that's where you need to build that enthusiasm and make them see what they're going to get from the work that you're going to do. Demonstrating capability is always great. If you've got case studies and you can demonstrate that you've done this before, that resonates very well. Same thing with references. Often clients are going to want to talk to existing clients, or if you have a software demo, you can demonstrate a tool during the proposal or sales call. I think that really resonates as well. And you should always close by having an agreement for further action. They may not be buying right there, but maybe the further action is you have to get back to them on a question that they've asked, or they need to go and go further up the line, and you can send them some materials to do that. But make sure that you've got a date or you've got a deliverable where you're going to come back to them if you haven't closed the sale right there. I'm going to end just with some comments now on some proposals, and then we'll turn it over to questions. I'm a proponent of, if you can make the proposal short, then that's a great thing. So say as little as you need to say to get the job done. Big, long proposals don't generally resonate well with clients. They want them to be concise, so address the problem and the result and how you're going to go about it. A big one is what you're going to need from the client, and then another caveat is when. So if you need data from a client, be really specific on what you need and be really specific on when you need it. Because you might say this project, I can get it done in 2 months, but if you don't tell the client that you need the data in 2 weeks' time to meet that 2-month deadline, you're going to be in trouble if they show up with that data in 6 weeks, and then they're still going to hold you to your 2-month deadline. Talk about the hard and the soft benefits of that. The hard benefits might be the costs. Soft benefits might be they might get higher employee satisfaction or greater customer satisfaction. I talked earlier about project completion. Make sure that's clear in your proposal. When the project ends, it either ends on a certain date with a presentation, it ends with the installation of some software, it ends with a report, but really make sure that you get that well-defined and that what's in scope and out of scope. Some of the biggest financial issues that bog consultants down is poor scope, where they get trapped into a project where they've underscoped it, they need to deliver, and they can't go back and charge for more money. So the minute your client starts to pull you out of scope and asking for things that aren't in there, just stop and say, I'd be glad to do that for you, but it's out of scope, and I think it's going to cost X. And then the client can make a decision at that point in time whether they want to spend X or they say, no, if it's going to cost that much, I don't want to do it. I can tell you one thing, if you tell them after the fact, they're always going to say that they didn't want to pay for it. Take into account who all might see the proposal. Often it's not just the person you're in contact with. They got to send it up the line. So you might want to put a bit more background in there. They might not be familiar with your firm. You might have to articulate the problem in a little bit more detail because someone else is going to be looking at that proposal cold. So that's, know the audience is really the message there. And follow up with questions. If you get questions on your proposal, make sure you get back to them on a timely basis and follow up and answer their questions. So, we've covered a lot today, and I think I've been in the consulting business for a long time, and I think it can be extremely rewarding, but you're going to have patience, and you're going to have some tolerance for ambiguity. And if you look at my little graphic there, it's not a straight line. It's kind of a windy road to success, but I think there's lots of successful consultants out there, and I think all of you can be successful as well. So I'm going to stop there, and Steve, I think we'll take some questions.
All right, Bob, great job. We do, again, just a reminder, the chat room on Ready Talk down there in the left-hand corner, we do have one question, which is actually perfect, really right on the money. While I tee that up, though, the rest of you, I encourage you also to log your questions in the chat room. Okay, Bob, so from Mara Davis, I think this is a question that's almost on everybody's mind at one time or another in their career. It kind of goes like, I'll read her question. It's easy to see what she's got a lot of experience, and she's gained it in industry, and she wants to move it on into her own business, it sounds like. She's a registered dietitian with over 12 years experience. She wants to move into consulting to consult with companies in areas of health and wellness for their employees or elder care services. I'm not certain how my expertise can be used with these clients. I really don't know the needs of this clientele in these areas. Here comes the question. How can I find out how to use my skills in consulting? A lot of ground there.
There's a lot of ground there. I think let me take the last one first. I think the part of that question is really that you're not sure about how to use your skills in those areas. So I think you're going to need some market research in that area. So if you know you want to get into consulting for companies in the areas of health and wellness, I think what you're going to have to do is do some market research with companies to see what their needs are and where what capabilities that they would use or not have in-house, so that they would have to go outside and get those kind of services outside. So I think that's what I would do, is I would do some kind of market research in those areas. I wouldn't go blindly into business without really defining that clientele and knowing for sure whether clients actually spend money on consultants in those areas. And I think that's the best advice I can give you there, is to do some research.
Bob, can I throw in my 2 cents here?
Sure.
This area is very interesting to me. I have a personal physical therapist, and he's also a personal trainer. And oftentimes I'm talking to him about, like, what do you do, for the front end of the situation, which is the other part of the three-legged stool, which is what his clients should be eating so that they don't break their knees and, they stay fit. So I'm just thinking, and listening to your question, I would, go online and find some good health counselors or personal trainers or people like that, physical therapists who might be willing to team up with you to get you into that business, just as a way to get started. Another thing is there's got to be like conferences or workshops or stuff like that on health counseling, and getting there and starting to network is also, I think, important, as well as Bob said, to do some research, some basic research on it. So anyway, see, what you're getting here is a little bit of the personal one-to-one counseling that you get at SCORE right on the webinar. We got another question here from Susan Vogel. Do you have data on typical retainer fees for general management consulting, and what gets included in those fees? And another question.
Yeah, Susan, I don't think there's any. I don't have any specific data on typical retainer fees, because I think it's unique to the situation. So what I could say, though, is I think it is often what's included would be, if you're going to go on a retainer just for general management or general consulting, you might often work something that it would include, either so many days per month or so many hours per month, if you're going to do that. So for example, you might have a general retainer with someone and say, I will be available, and I'll be able to give you, and I'm just going to pick a number out of the air, 10 hours a month or 20 hours a month or something like that. And then the way I would price that would be taking your hourly rate that you're going to use, and then you take 10 times your hourly rate, and then give them a kind of a fixed fee for that. The caution there would be, if it starts to grow and they get, in my example, they start using 20 hours a month of your time, you're going to have to go back to them and revisit that retainer. But if it's pretty predictable, you can give your client a specific monthly number that they can budget for, which is usually what they're looking for, some kind of budget certainty. But again, you need to kind of base it off some kind of experience in the situation on how many resources, how many people, or how much time they're going to use.
Okay. Susan, I hope that answered your question. If you need a follow-up, just go ahead and type it in. We've got about 5 minutes left, and that's usually time for 2 or 3 more questions. We do have one from Dorfridia Williams. It goes like this: what are some of the best online schools that offer business consulting certifications or certificates?
I'm sorry on that one, Dorfridia. I'm not aware of what the best online schools are for business consulting. So I'm sorry, I can't help you on that one.
Yeah, I think this is Steve Smith again. My thought on this is that the first place to think is kind of going back to what Mara was thinking. If you've got some expertise that you've gained in your 9-to-5 job over the last N number of years. That might be what could be your core, and then kind of team up with somebody who's got some client base, and you get your expertise by doing it. It's almost like that. I think that's the way a lot of us do it. Yeah, sure.
You may look at MOOC, M-O-O-C, which stands for Massive Open Online Course. A lot of them, they're basically people who teach at normal universities all over the world. You can find courses from Stanford and Harvard, and each course is either free. You just you listen to the online seminars. You may take some quizzes, but I think for $59 you can also get a certificate. So they are jam-packed with very valuable information, and you can get certificates. And under one of the more common MOOCs is something called Coursera, and I've taken a number of courses from there, and that's very good content.
And you're wondering, who is that masked man? Well, that's Herb Wexler, who is also a SCORE business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. And how do you spell that, MOOCs again?
It's M-O-O-C.
M-O-O-C.
With a short for Massive Open Online Course.
Yeah, I think M-O-O-C is easier. But, so I hope that helps. Okay, so we got time for one more here, and we've got it from Hunter Post. And what are our thoughts about an executive/leadership coach and just getting started? Best ways to establish contact and prospective clients.
A couple comments there, Hunter. I think this is an excellent one that if you already have, relationships with organizations, either from prior work that you've done, where you're going to be, at least your name is going to be known, I think I would start there within your own personal network and building that. Much more difficult to do it on cold calling. However, you can also, I think, work your existing network to maybe canvass them to see if they are aware of other organizations that are in need of that kind of expertise. I've also seen situations where people like this will sometimes run a half-day seminar for prospects. And the purpose of the seminar there would be to kind of showcase your skills, your process, what's unique about it. You may or may not charge a modest fee to attend, but what it really does is it gives you a list of hotter prospects, if you like, because people that come to that clearly have an interest in the topic, and then you can follow up one-on-one with the attendees to see if you can generate individual executive leadership and coaching. So I think, use your network, and if social media works for you, you can go to your network that way, and then maybe try and run some kind of workshop or a seminar to generate leads as well.
Okay, great, Bob. Hunter, I hope that answered your question. We've got 1 or 2 minutes left here. If anybody has a quick one, we'll do it. If not, I'll go ahead and close out this webinar. Thanks, Bob, for participating today and with all that subject matter expertise that you brought to the table. Appreciate that a lot. Also, a reminder that we do have the next webinar. We have, again, 2 every month, Tuesday, and they're always on Tuesdays, generally the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. You can find out the exact schedule. We'll give you the marketing information a month in advance. The next one is November 22nd on Unlocking the Mystery of Franchising with Carolyn Fleming. So thanks for everyone for attending, and remember to go to scorefairfieldcounty.org to keep in touch with us and make sure you're taking advantage of all the things that we have to offer. And have a nice day, and if you haven't voted, please do. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.